On today's Locked On Jayhawks, we deep dive into Mackenzie Mgbako, the five-star recruit who decommitted from Duke, finished up his visit at the University of Kansas. Where do things stand? What's his scouting report, strengths, weaknesses, final verdict? Should he actually be the number one target for KU? Yeah, I said that even with Hunter Dickinson out there. Should he be number one? Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Jayhawks, your daily podcast on the Kansas Jayhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Today's Locked On Jayhawks, we're going to have a ton of fun deep diving into Mackenzie Mgbako. I'm Derek Johnson. You can find me as well on Rock Chalk Sports Talk Monday through Friday from 3 to 6 p.m. on KLWN in Lawrence. Thanks for making Locked On Jayhawks your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get any of your podcasts. And on today's edition of the show, we're going to be deep diving into Mackenzie Mgbako. You can also find us on YouTube. Like, subscribe to the show. All right, let's get right into it with Mgbako. So, I guess, who is Mackenzie Mgbako? If you don't know, if you've been living under a rock or something, we talked about him a bit in like our forward rankings that were available. He was our lone tier one guy when we did that. And at the time didn't really, know how much Kansas was going to have interest in, didn't really know how much Kansas was going to be able to get into the recruitment of Mackenzie Mgbako. But this is a five-star recruit who was committed to Duke. Then Mark Mitchell, Kyle Filipowski decided they were coming back. Obviously, they're bringing in a really good recruiting class in total, but Mgbako was leading that recruiting class. He was Duke's highest rated recruit on what is, I forget if they were number one or number two in the recruiting rankings. I think number two. I think Kentucky was number one. And so, I mean, this is supposed to be a high-level kid, but because Mark Mitchell plays better at the four, like Duke did play him a lot at the three because they were playing those two bigs kind of together last year. Probably profiles more to being a four-man. With Filipowski, you have a lot of minutes filled up between those two at those big positions, in addition to everybody else they kind of have on the team. So he wanted more immediate playing time and a path to more of that to try to be a one and done because he wants to be that. So he decommitted to Duke, and obviously there's always a worry whenever you have, like, if you're trying to get into a recruitment of a kid who is committed to somebody who is a Nike school, right? If you are an Adidas school, which KU is, because sometimes you feel like, okay, does that mean that, Nike has been kind of pushing this kid through the Nike system and they're going to stay on their kind of grassroots circuit? Like, is this a Nike kid where Nike's kind of, I think sometimes you get the inkling that if he committed to a Nike school or he committed to an Adidas school or he committed to whatever, that's going to be the path he's going to stay on. That's going to be the path that he is going to go back to. So he would just go to another Nike school. Well, you look at the four schools that it was released by Adam Zagoria that he is going to be visiting, or has at this point already visited. You had St. John's, who he had the first visit with. You have Kansas now. Kansas is an Adidas school. Then you're having two more visits with Indiana and Louisville. Those are Adidas schools. So three of the four are Adidas schools. So I think clearly this is not something where it's like, no, he has to go to a Nike school or something like that. I think, in fact, that would kind of prove the opposite to you. So that obviously is good news for Kansas. And he took the visit at the University of Kansas. We'll see if he ends up visiting Louisville and Indiana. If he ends up visiting those two, then I assume you get to a decision a little bit after that. I don't know if there's more schools that could tack on at some point, or who knows? Maybe he loved the visit so much that he's going to cancel the other stuff and he doesn't really care and just wants to go to KU. We'll wait and see. We'll wait and see on how that goes. But the visit did wrap up for KU. It did officially happen, and seems like it went well, as you would imagine. I say this all the time. A lot of times visits go well, especially when you're Kansas basketball, where you have so many bells and whistles to kind of show off and to entice a kid with. All right, let's get into the scouting report, strengths and weaknesses, final verdict, and that fun question I had. Should he actually be the number one target for KU at this point? Let's get into it. First, though, this episode of Locked On Jayhawks is brought to you by Built Bar. Looking for a delicious snack but don't want all of the sugar and calories? Then you need the best tasting protein bar ever with Built. You might be wanting to eat healthier snacks over the course of the day, that you don't feel sluggish and kind of like, I ate something bad for me. I had, some candy, or I had just something that's not great, but it tastes good. So, I'll just snack on that and hope that holds me over. Well, Built Bars are healthy and they taste amazing. They are covered in 100% real dark chocolate. They come in unbelievable flavors like churro, brownie, and cookies and cream. And they maintain amazing macros while tasting like a candy bar. So you're getting that taste, you're getting that healthy side of things. They're only 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, whopping 17 grams of protein. You can order all your specialty orders and all your Built Bars at Built.com. That'll always be available. It still is. But you can still go in if you prefer to do your shopping, in person, or you want to just pick some up on your way. Head to your nearest Walmart, grab a 4-bar box over in the pharmacy section at Walmart. You can get cookies and cream, double chocolate bar, coconut puff. Head to your Sam's Club, get a 13-bar box with hit flavors like brownie batter puff, churro puff. You can thank me later with Built Bar. All right, on to the Mackenzie Mgbako scouting report here. This scouting report will be a little bit different than other scouting reports that I have done. A lot of the other scouting reports, I have numbers to work with. I have, their stats that they put up in college when you're going through the transfer portal. I have their synergy profiles to give you percentiles of what they ranked in this and that. I have the Ken Palm numbers about, did they do better against better competition, or, what, I don't know, like rebounding rate or something like that maybe is a little bit different than the rebounding numbers. Like, I have some of those tools to use to help you guys out with these scouting reports, in addition to it's just easier to watch those guys in college. I might have had an eye on a few of them for several games over the course of the season. I don't really watch high school basketball, so I'm going to defer to some of the other experts or recruiting draft type of people who write up these scouting reports and go from there. But I've pieced together some stuff to give you, I think, good information on this kid. So Mackenzie Mgbako, if you're looking at the recruiting rankings, he is number 8 on the 24/7 Sports Composite list. He is 7th on the 24/7 alone list, 9th on ESPN, number 8 on On3, number 8 on Rivals. So 7 to 9, no matter where you look, and 8th on the composite there. We'll start with the strengths. This is from Adam Finkelstein from 24/7 Sports, who did the write-up, the scout, the evaluation on him. His shot making from behind the arc is his best asset. He can also make the types of shots that translate to the next level, pick and pop threes, slipping out of ball screens to make shots on the move, or creating shots with a series of sidestep or step back shots. The mid post has long been a staple of his individual offense, but now he's getting some easy buckets by moving without the ball more freely. So very clearly, he projects to be a very good shooter in a multitude of levels that you can use him as a shooter, right? You do pick and pop with him. You just have him slip out of ball screens. You move him off a screen away from the ball or something like that. And obviously him being good in the mid post is helpful too. It just gives you another way of possibly attacking. How often do we see, a KU player, whether it was Ochai Agbaji 2 years ago or Jalen Wilson last year, coming around a screen and attacking, and the defense, plays too far off him and they have to pull up from the mid-range area, right? Like kind of around that free throw line. So that's obviously good. I was watching some highlights and some of the stuff on Mgbako, and it looked like he had a really kind of, slippery game, the ability to kind of work from that mid post to kind of spin by some guy or slip by him and get to the rim as well, which I was kind of impressed with. Obviously having another guy who can get those shots for you and be a shooter is going to be very important for this team. They have Nick Timberlake. He's going to be your kind of go-to 3-point shooter at this point, but you need even more of it. You need more than just one guy on the floor who can do that to be successful. And Mgbako profiles to being someone that potentially could be just that. Now, this also from Adam Finkelstein from 24/7 Sports. Physically, Mgbako appears to be in the best shape of his career to date and was also productive enough on the glass to hold his own at the 4. So when you're looking at his size, he is like 6'8", low 200 pounds. When you look at the size, it would be someone who would probably play the 3 or the 4. I think KU would basically be playing him at the 4. And because of his rebounding ability, like last year, I think part of KU's defensive rebounding woes were a bit overinflated because they actually ended up like basically in line with the team that won the title from the year before. But for both those teams, that was not like a strength. And so ideally, if you're not going to be as good of a 3-point shooting team, what are ways you can make up in that? Well, be a better offensive and defensive rebounding team. And if you have, a lineup with Mgbako or KJ Adams or like Ernest Uday or Zuby Ejiofor, that should be the start of a good rebounding team, right? And that's a positive. Now, this comes from NBA DraftNet. Good size and length for position with 6'10" wingspan and about an 8'9" and a quarter standing reach. Good strength and impressive physical profile. One of the more college-ready players from a physical standpoint. That's interesting, especially because the low 200 pounds, you would think maybe he needs to add 10, 15, 20 pounds. But certainly that's good news because, if he's ready for the college game from a physical standpoint, okay, you don't have to worry about that. Also, can be a matchup problem taking smaller wings into the post, and there aren't many who can match his strength at this level. So, I mean, if he gets matched up on a 3-man, take him into the post, right? We saw Bill Self do some of that with Jalen Wilson if he was on a smaller man, just post him up. We saw him do it occasionally like Christian Brown. Remember that in the national title game against, when I forget if it was Caleb Love or RJ Davis on him. So that is something Bill Self will utilize. Flashes solid post play, reverse pivots, fadeaways, jump hooks, effective slasher, and initiates finishes through contact. Good rebounder for position. That kind of goes back in line with some of the stuff we were talking about earlier there. And then good tools and versatility as a defender, showing ability to switch, defending up and down the lineup, blocks shots well for his position. I know some people do have questions about is his foot speed, his quickness good enough to guard college threes? I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. I think you could probably get away with some of him at the 3 if you're going to have him at the 3, KJ at the 4, maybe like Ernest or Zuby or Hunter Dickinson potentially at the 5, depending on kind of what happens. But I think mostly he would be a 4-man for you. Now, what would that mean for like KJ Adams, for instance? Is he more of a 5 at that point? Is he splitting minutes at the 4? Who's starting at the 4? I don't have the answer to that. That would be certainly a big conversation if Kansas was to land Mackenzie Mgbako. But I think for the most part, you look at him playing the 4, maybe he can give you 5 to 10 minutes a game, kind of playing the 3. But that also helps you that he can guard down the lineup if you do want to switch and he gets switched onto a big man, like he can at least hold his own, even though if that's not something you want to just do, each and every possession. Now, I do have, before I get to the weaknesses here, I do have something that I put in the not sure category. I read off from Adam Finkelstein, him talking about the 3-point shooting and the different ways that he can get off a shot and being used in the pick and pop game and everything. But what I put in the not sure category is the shooting consistency. It is clear he has the potential to be a really good shooter, right? But is it college ready or is it just a projection? Like Grady Dick was both college ready and projected out to be a good shooter in the NBA. With Mgbako is like, Tyrese Maxey, for instance, came to Kentucky, right? I think he shot like 26%. I don't know. Is it in like the 20%, 29% from 3 at Kentucky? He goes to the NBA and he's immediately like this knockdown shooter. He projected to be a really good shooter. And maybe part of it was just that at Kentucky, he wasn't really set up and like they weren't running a ton of great offense and he wasn't getting great shots. And maybe it was spaced better in the NBA. That could be part of it. But I guess with Mgbako, you do wonder, like, what if he's just a low 30s, high 20% 3-point shooter? And then by the time he's in his 3rd year of the NBA, he eventually is like a great 3-point shooter. Is it just a projection or is it what he was actually projected to do at college? And I think the reason why, so in his high school career, he made 122 career 3-pointers in 72 games. So a little under 2 per game. He made 31 in 16 games at the high school level as a senior. So about 2 per game. He shot 43% from the floor in 2021 at the Nike EYBL, 43% from the floor in the 2022 Nike EYBL, which that's not like horrible, but that's not like jump off the page numbers either. And in the last year's Nike EYBL in 2022, he was just 26% from 3. So again, there's the 26%. And you're like, wait, I thought he was known as being a great shooter. But then again, he shot 6.8 3-point attempts per game for that 26%, which, I mean, that is like very high volume for, I don't know in the EYBL if they play 40-minute halves or if it's like high school where it's like 32-minute or not halves, 40-minute games, if it's 32-minute games or something. But 6.8 attempts per game is a very good number. So that either means one of two things. That either means he was just chucking up threes, which would lead to a lower percentage, or they kept running plays for him to get open threes because he is a good shooter. And Nike EYBL, I mean, it's not like this is like a 50-game sample or something like that, right? So the attempts per game tell you that there is confidence there, that there is confidence from the coach and his teammates that he is a good shooter, and that maybe it was just a bad three-point shooting game for him. Maybe we talked with Kevin Flaherty on Rock Chalk Sports Talk earlier this week, and he kind of talked about how, yeah, I mean, you get him into a college system, like he projects to be a good shooter with a better system with Bill Self and stuff around him that's setting him up for more open threes. So the counter to that would be his free throw shooting has been under 70% both years at the Nike EYBL. Sometimes that shows touch and projection. So I have no idea what to think. Is he a really good shooter? Is he just somebody that projects to be a good shooter? I don't know. You take the risk with it and you hope that the shooting does come around. I mean, Josh Jackson wasn't known as being a good shooter, and he ended up shooting like 37%. I think Bill Self, if you're talented enough, will be able to figure it out for you. Now, on to the weaknesses side of things here. This is from Adam Finkelstein with 24/7 Sports. His swing skills are his defensive versatility and shot creation abilities, both of which are rooted in his mobility, foot speed, and ability to play low to the ground when necessary. If these two areas develop, both his versatility and overall projection will go to new levels. So again, there's that part about defensive versatility. Can he guard against threes? Shot creation ability would just be like, can he create shots off the bounce? Sounds like to me more of right now a guy that is a kind of spot up shooter from the outside, or somebody you can post up and let, kind of do certain work on the interior, in the mid post, in the high post, in the low post, stuff like that. Which I mean, when you're talking about a freshman, they're not going to have a fully complete game. That is still a very versatile offensive punch that he could bring to the table for a Bill Self offense. But yeah, the defense, the versatility, and the foot speed part, the mobility, does that prevent him from playing the three? And if that prevents him from playing the three, that can limit how much he could play. Because if you're playing KJ Adams at the 4, which one of them starts, first of all? And if it is KJ, we haven't seen a lot of Bill Self players ever go from starting to not starting. It's a very short list. I mean, I think Sasha Khan, but that's like partially like, I think he offered to do it or something like that. I forget, Brady Morningstar maybe might have done it. Like it's a very short list of guys who have done that. And even if KJ's not starting, he's going to play a sizable role on the team. So like if KJ's playing 25 minutes per game, let's say he plays 5 minutes at the center, if you're moving him away from that, but he still plays some small ball center, and then you're playing him 20 minutes at the 4, it means you only have 20 other minutes at the 4 to give out. So maybe Mgbako gets that, but then where does he get his other minutes? Well, can he play the 3? That's kind of part of it to figure out if that works or not. This also from NBA DraftNet. Above average athlete, but isn't incredibly explosive. He can get wild with his shot selection and has tunnel vision at times, bailing out the defense, has a habit of picking up his dribble early, holding it for a few seconds, then go up with a contested shot, sometimes from distance. While it works at times at this level, he has a tendency to put his head down and force his way to the rim, has room to improve offensive technique. Overall, his players will match his physicality at next levels. Very high volume shooter at a not so efficient rate. Now, Jalen Wilson wasn't like not efficient, but he wasn't like super efficient. So I almost view it as like if you bring Mgbako in, he's just fitting into that, right? But I think with potential to maybe shoot better from 3 than Jalen did. But I don't know that you would expect it. I mean, Jalen took a ton of threes and he was shooting like 33%. So I don't know. Now, as far as how he'd fit, the final verdict, should Mgbako be target number 1? Let's get to that next and finish things up with Locked On Jayhawks. All right, finishing things up. So how he would fit, like I said, I think you'd be playing him mostly at the 4. Maybe you would try to get him some extra minutes at the 3 position to both help you out in terms of lineup versatility and to just find him extra minutes and to make sure that KJ and the big men are all happy getting the minute allotments that they need as well. But I think mostly you'd be looking at him at the 4. He would have to, it'd be a fight between, I think, him and KJ Adams to start at the 4. My expectation at that point would be KJ starts the year at the 4. And then we'll see if Mgbako could ever usurp him or eventually become the guy that's starting at the 3. I think that you could make a real argument he should be target number 1. There is enough here that I think Mgbako represents a high ceiling, lower floor prospect. We've seen enough prospects come in and struggle to find their footing in year 1 under Bill Self and at Kansas. There's a chance that Mgbako comes in and that he is an inefficient year 1 player and that he would eventually be a really good player, whether it would be him in the NBA or in year 2 or year 3 at Kansas, and he's eventually an All-American. But then in year 1, you're still taking that large jump, making those adjustments at the collegiate level that we've seen from a lot of other guys. And if that happens, it really hurts if at that point he was your number 1 target and you were expecting those big things and it didn't work out to that level. And it was more of a role player than like a potential star player, right? But if it does work out, the ceiling there is he's one of your best shooters, and he provides that at the 4 position. He helps you space the floor. He's a, top 10 recruit that ends up being like a first-round pick, continues your help in recruiting, and can be one of the favorites to maybe even lead the team in scoring, because it's kind of a crapshoot for who that would be, sans Hunter Dickinson. So there's a lot to like there. I think the argument for why he would be target number 1, and I'm recording this before Hunter Dickinson has announced anything, so if Dickinson announces something and then this comes out, then this is going to sound stupid talking about, but could you make the argument that the Hunter Dickinson show, the kind of circus around the player, that maybe, I don't know, are other current players on KU going to be a little unhappy with how this whole thing's gone, and seeing the public money and being like, why am I getting that type of money? And being like, why are you bringing this guy in? I wanted to earn my spot, stuff like that. I don't know. Maybe with Mgbako, I don't think you have to worry about any of that. So I think you could make that argument. You could make the argument that the potential is higher, because what if this guy looks like a top 5 pick in the NBA draft? Then at that point, his skills maybe are the best player you could get out there. So I think there's a lot moving to answer that. I would probably say no, you do have Hunter Dickinson as the number 1, but I think clearly Mgbako to me is the number 2. I don't know. Ron Holland gets interesting in there too. He's slightly ranked higher as a recruit. I think Mgbako has better shooting ability than Ron Holland, but Ron Holland maybe more switchable, better athlete. Maybe you would argue Ron Holland there. I don't think the Ron Holland one is as realistic. It feels like that one's going to be like G League Ignite or one of these other schools. With Mgbako, it feels like this one is more realistic. So that does make me want to put him either number 1 or number 2 on that target list, depending on what you think about the other stuff with the whole Dickinson commitment. Whereas Mgbako, it's a little more quiet of a commitment, and I think that can be good for team chemistry. Maybe I'm overvaluing that. I know Bill Self tends to figure that stuff out, and I probably shouldn't worry about it, but there is a part of me that thinks that with Mgbako. So obviously, verdict, 100% a take. Do everything you can to get Mgbako. He would be a great fit for KU. Whether it's him coming off the bench and earning his way to being a starter, or starting right away in the starting lineup, he would be able to give you the potential of shooting at that position, gives you another big-time recruit, which that's never bad if that helps funnel over into the next year and help you bring in more recruits if you have success and the guy goes into the NBA. But that'll do it for this episode of Locked On Jayhawks. You can catch us wherever you find any of your podcasts or on YouTube. Like and subscribe to the show. We'll see you next time with Locked On Jayhawks.